So Super Bowl Sunday, I think it was about 3 years ago, so pretty early on in our church plant, and we were meeting in the afternoons. We had started out in a building, we had renting a church building in the mornings. We lost it right around Christmas time, which was devastating and a whole other story for another time. But the best we can do was find a building that would lease to us in the afternoons, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we were doing afternoon church, which was like purgatory. It was really hard. I know some of you liked it, but it was hard for me, especially during football season, especially on Super Bowl Sunday. So Super Bowl Sunday started to roll around, and we're pretty early on in the plant, like I said, and like, man, do we have church? Do we not have church? And we think, man, I don't know. And it just felt like, well, we should set a precedent and have church. We can't cancel church for the Super Bowl, so we're going to do it. And I talked to some people and got some counsel and said, yeah, you have to do church, set a precedent for church. You can't cancel church for the Super Bowl. So we have church, Super Bowl Sunday at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And there were 6 people there, 6, and that includes my family, which my family didn't come, so I guess it was some other people. There was Noah was there because I made him, Sarah, I think the Hans, and there was like, should we do it? Do we not do it? Like I had a message, and it was really kind of sad, and we're thinking, well, what was the precedent we were setting? Like, we have to have church. We have to have our church service. Listen, if we ran into a conflict with the Super Bowl now, I would totally cancel church. I would let church go. I would call it right off. I'd say, go and be with people. Go and be the church. And I love gatherings. I love our Sunday gatherings. It sets a tone. It creates a moment. We're all encouraged, so we might be an encouragement. But Sunday mornings are just the beginning of church. They're just the beginning of church story. We are the church. We don't go to church. So what happens as we live out our lives day to day, that's where the church really becomes. That's the church is being present. That's who the church is meant to be. And so sometimes even in our community, as we wrestle through these things as a new church plant, kind of legacy stuff, we sometimes have to let go of old things to welcome something new. We have to let go of sort of the religiosity around a Sunday service. Like, you know what? It's the Super Bowl. Have Super Bowl with your family. Go be with your neighbors. We'll see you next Sunday. And everything is okay. It's fine. And so in the text we're going to look at this morning, it's Jesus kind of leaning into this idea, like you have to let some old things go. You have to let some of this old stuff pass. The new stuff that I'm bringing doesn't fit into this old model you have, and this old paradigm, this old wineskin, as he says. And so we're looking at this story. Jesus is being questioned by the religious leaders, the teachers of the law. They're kind of getting after him. And what has just happened, this is in the beginning of his story, he's just called his disciples. So he's just calling his disciples, and they're sort of following him. He's starting to get a little bit of a name for himself, but it's still pretty early on. And then the religious leaders are getting on his case because one of the disciples that Jesus called, and we're going to look at this guy next week, is named Levi, and he's a tax collector. And the Jewish people did not like tax collectors. He was a bad man. He was a sinner. He worked for Rome. He stole people's money. And Jesus is like, I like this guy. He's going to be on my team. And Jesus sits down and hangs out with this guy Levi. Yeah, he has a meal with him, and Levi who will eventually become Matthew. His name will become Matthew. And so the religious leaders are like, Jesus is doing things way different. Like, we've seen rabbis before. We know disciples. We know how this thing is supposed to work. But what you're doing is a little different. This is in Mark 5. This is around verse 31, 32, 33. And Jesus is getting questioned. Like, what are you doing, Jesus? You're doing it all weird. And so it goes like this. One day, people said to Jesus, John the Baptist's disciples fast and pray regularly, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees. Why are your disciples always eating and drinking? Why are your disciples always eating and drinking? I love that. Jesus responded, do wedding guests fast while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and they will have to fast. Then Jesus gave this illustration. No one tears a piece of cloth from a new garment and uses it to patch up an old garment. For the new patch would be ruined. The new patch wouldn't even match the old garment. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the new wine would burst the wineskins, spilling the wine and ruining the skins. New wine must be stored in new wineskins. But no one who drinks the old wine seems to want the new wine. The old is just fine, they say. So the Pharisees getting after him, the people getting after him. Jesus, you've got to do things real different. You're doing things different than what we're used to. Your religion, your way of faith seems very different than what we've seen, what we've practiced. As this illustration with the wine is great. And so in this time, after the wine was pressed, and this kind of works out today too, after the wine is pressed, it goes through this real tumultuous fermentation, right? It's creating alcohol, and it gets real crazy, and it expands. Then after it settles a little bit, it's still fermenting, it's still expanding. And then you put it in clay jars or wine skins. And the wine skins at this time were like a partially tanned goat hide. And they would fill these skins, these goat skins, with the wine while it was still fermenting. And the new skins had enough elasticity to handle the expanding wine. But if they had used an old skin, so a skin that had already been stretched, because it stretches out, then the wine would expand the skin, and the skin would burst. So you had to use a new wine skin with the new wine. You put the new wine in the old skin, it would expand because the elasticity was gone, and it would ruin the wine and the skin, and you would waste a lot of wine. Right? And when we try to place newness into our lives, because we probably went through that, last month. It's like, it's a new year, 2021. We're going to put 2020 behind us. Let's do it. You want to put some newness into your life, whether it's your health or spirituality, your emotions, or finances, or family relations, or bitterness or forgiveness. It goes on and on and on. What's the new thing you want in your life? What's the new thing? We try to get that newness into our lives, yet we do not consider changing the existing container of our lives. We do the same thing. It doesn't work. We waste that newness. It spills out. This old container cannot contain the newness. Right? And our use of time, our habits, our language, our generosity, our demeanor towards others, the things that we think, every moment of our life, like this forms our container. Like your daily life forms your container. And what you do daily determines who you become permanently. What you do daily determines who you become permanently. Right? And this is why resolutions have such a hard time. We pick one thing and we try to squeeze it into the life that we have. We try to squeeze it into our old life, the life we are worth living. Jesus says, no, it doesn't work that way. What I'm bringing to the table is totally new, and it needs a new container. It needs a new container, one that can expand. If you bring too much oldness, it's going to break. It's going to waste life. And we do that when we try to bring too much, when we bring newness into our lives without changing sort of what is or what was. And so Jesus, he's liking his religion, his kingdom that he's bringing with him to this new wine. This new wine. He said, it doesn't fit into what you've been doing. It doesn't fit. What you've been doing served the purpose, right? The old wineskin served the purpose. It was fine for its time, but now it's time for something fresh, for something new. And Jesus was so different. And this is the guy we are trying to follow as a church, is Jesus. And he was different. He turned heads. He upset some people. He did things like, wait, we never did that before. Right? So in the beginning, like, I can't cancel church for the Super Bowl. And then I was like, well, you know what? That church is just part of it. A Sunday church is just part of it. We're on mission. We got to let some of our methods go, but we're on mission to love and reach and engage people. And so Jesus did things different. And the Jews noticed that Jesus did things very differently, right? He was a friend of sinners. He was a friend of sinners. The religious leaders, the Pharisees, they would not get near sinners. Jesus was befriending them. Jesus and his disciples freely mingled with the crowd. They often went to feasts, to parties. Right? Jesus and his disciples were often seen in public and social gatherings. The Pharisees were frequently fasting, praying, probably twice a week as a religious obligation, and they were isolating themselves from daily life. Right? It's likely when these questions are coming up that they're in the middle of a fast now, and Jesus is eating. Like, how is it you guys are eating? Because we're all fasting. We're all working so hard, and Jesus is having a good time. Now, in defense of the Pharisees and the religious leaders, anyone ever feel that way? Like, you're working so hard to follow the rules, and other people are just having a good time. They're just enjoying themselves, having a party. Jesus says this, and there's a couple of different ways to look at this. I think there is discipline that's helpful in our lives and devotion to our faith. But Jesus said this in Matthew 11, "Come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus wants it to be light. Jesus wants it to be easy. He has done the hard work. He doesn't want us to live with the burden of trying to work our way out or up to God. Even John the Baptist, who we love and was Jesus' forerunner, Jesus' cousin, right? Awesome guy. But he lived kind of a different life. This ascetic lifestyle and frugal living was sort of part of his call, his Nazarite call. And his disciples followed his practices, right? He lived in the desert. He kind of isolated himself. He was a little weird, which was good for him and good for that time. But Jesus and his disciples, well, we're not doing that either. And they did things that most Jews would not do, right? Even on like a Sabbath, there's a case where Jesus and his disciples, they eat corn from a field. And they don't ceremonially wash their hands. And the religious leaders are like, what the heck? How can he be doing that? Right? John and his disciples are out in the wilderness and they're separating themselves from public. But Jesus is like, man, we're with the public. We hang out, we sit and we eat. We're present. That's our mission. To be with the people. To touch as many people as I can while I'm here right now. I don't care if they're sick, lame, sinner, good, bad. He wants to be with the people. And he explained, like, this is not a time for fasting. So there will be a time for fasting. There will be a time, but it's not right now. This is a time of celebration. I'm with you right now. I'm with you right now. And this was the beginning of this huge paradigm shift. This new order. That Jesus would show us a new way of understanding the law. He would show us a new way of worship. He would show us a new way of rest. A new way of doing Sabbath. And he uses these parables about the patch and the wine to emphasize the incompatibility of the old and the new. The old and the new. We're in the middle of moving into our new house right now. Lived in our River Park house for 11 years. Great experience, love the house. Tons of good times there, good parties and tears and laughter and food and wine and the whole thing. We love the house. Amazing. But it was time to move. We felt led to move, and God led us to a place through George and Jean, and Jorge was super helpful, to a new place, a new home. And we love the new home, and we'd love to have you over to the new home at some point here. It's got a yard and the whole thing. But we moved out of our old house, and this is kind of a bigger house. But we moved the old house. We moved into storage, and from storage into our garage, and now we're trying to move it into our house. And you know what? A lot of it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. The old house doesn't just fit in the new house. Even though the new house seems like, oh, the new house is bigger and has more room, it doesn't fit. It's different. It's a different house. The old house was great. It was great for a time, right? It served our purposes. Now we're into a new house. And the stuff that we use there just isn't quite working here. So we're selling stuff and having to buy new stuff. You can't just move all the junk from the old house into the new house, right? And we do that in our lives. We try to jump into a new season. We try to take a shift. We try to make some decisions and cross a threshold, right? Emotionally, spiritually, financially, relationally, with your career. I'm going to do that. But you take all the old junk that you had in your past and you move it over here. No, it doesn't work. You kind of have to step away from that. He's just like, it was fine, but you have to step away from that. The new life that I'm bringing needs a new container. And he says, you know what? I'll do that for you. But you have to let go of the old junk. You have to let go of the old life. You have to give up your old life. And I will fill it with something brand new, something better. Let's pray. God, thank you for who you are, for your story, for your grace with us, for your lessons and real life, just grit, Lord, that you spend time with people you still do that now today. I pray for those who are just hanging on to the past. Maybe it's regret. Maybe it's bad decisions. Maybe that's addiction. Maybe that's just some kind of junk, bitterness you can't seem to shake. And you're trying to be new. Lord, help them let go of that stuff. Help them step into the new. Lord, help us all step into the new. Open our eyes and hearts to what you might have for us, God. Help us be brave enough to open up a new container, to step into a new chapter. We love you, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, you guys, don't forget your kids. Have fun today. We'll be on the hill probably every Sunday now for the next few. We're also live streaming that service around 10:15, so you can jump on through the app and see what's going on up there. Peace.